What do you think is one of the most beautiful skylines in the world?
Keep watching and I'll take you there.
Hi, it is Around the World with Joshua and Alyssa. Thank you for joining us today. We have some exciting things to share with you. Alyssa's going to tell you about a place that she has been that I have not gotten to go yet. So let's get started.
Yep. So here's the bummer though. I went to this place when I wasn't a photographer yet.
Oh.
So I
No
only...
pictures.
No, I do have some.
Okay.
But not as many as I would if I were to go back to this place today. But I really hope to get
Well,
that
that's
opportunity
because
to
I
go
would
back.
be with you. And I would take a lot of pictures.
Yes, that too. So we're going to talk about Hong Kong for a few weeks. And you might know that I know somebody who lives in Hong Kong, which is why I got to go there. So I'll show you a picture in a little bit and see if you remember before we get there. So we're going to talk about Hong Kong today. And today we're going to specifically talk about the Skyline. And the Hong Kong skyline, I was reading about it. It is actually considered one of the most beautiful skylines in the world, which I thought was pretty cool. This is a view kind of from a mountain peak behind the city. So you're like looking out kind of from the back side of the skyline. Now I want to show you a really popular version of the skyline, and that would be this one, which is at night. And it is a really beautiful one because they have a light show at night too, where they have all these cool lasers that show up on the buildings and they make different patterns and stuff. But the buildings are just really pretty and they're right on the water, which is also really cool. So this is called Victoria Harbor, and you get to see a lot of the big skyscraper buildings. And I was reading about it. There are over 9,000 high-rise buildings in Hong Kong alone.
Whoa. How big is the city, like, mileage-wise?
I don't remember that, but because land is so expensive, everybody just builds straight up because it's too spendy.
Yeah.
And then over 4,000 of those are considered skyscrapers. So anything over 328 feet tall is considered a skyscraper. So Hong Kong has quite a few of them.
Wow.
So this is a view of the skyline at night, and it's actually from out on the water, which is kind of cool.
So, do you know this? Would 328 feet be equivalent to 100 meters?
I think so.
Because 328 sounds random.
It's really random.
But 100 meters sounds...
Yeah.
Okay.
I think that's what it was, but I was trying to look up things in feet and inches that
Yep.
make the most sense.
I didn't know that, so I learned something.
They also have a Ferris wheel, so you can't really tell all the way because I was trying to get the moon in focus too with this picture, but this is a Ferris wheel and the moon is that dot that's like off to the right a little bit.
Oh, I thought the moon was the big white...
No, that's the center of the Ferris wheel.
Oh, I like you. Wow, you centered that nicely.
No, that's the center of the Ferris wheel.
Okay.
And then the city is kind of behind it. But I just thought that was kind of cool too.
Uh-huh.
Also back in my not so great picture days. One of the times that I went down and we got to see the harbor view, it was a really foggy day. So I think it might have been that same day or kind of in the same time that we saw that first picture. There was a bunch of pollution coming over from China, so the air was kind of gross. But it also kind of added to the look of the city skyline. And you can see to the left a Chinese junk boat, and that's pretty famous for Hong Kong. To have those boats. Oh, you can see the Ferris wheel on the right. Do you see it in the corner?
Yep.
And then there's another junk boat out farther than that. I think now they have like tourists and stuff that ride them, or they have them out there because the tourists do like them a lot. Well, they're cool. They're so unique.
Well, those sails are what makes them identifiable.
For sure. So, if you didn't remember who lives in Hong Kong, it is my friend Lydia, who was my roommate when I was in Peru. So she lived in Hong Kong when I was in Guam, and she still lives there today. But I got to go visit her 2 times when I was living in Guam, because it was a really quick flight. And one time they had an airline for a really short time that did flights for like $100 round trip.
Oh, that's right.
Super, super basic. My knees barely fit in the seat, and I could only carry my backpack with no food or liquid in it. It was really weird.
But for a short flight, you don't need anything.
No, but when you're thirsty and you
Oh.
think about getting on a plane and not having anything, because they
I
won't
guess.
serve you anything
I guess.
either. It was a little bit like super basic. And they searched my bag to make sure there was nothing in it and weighed it. It was very, very particular. But I got to go visit Lydia twice, and we had a super time both times that I went to see her. So as I was also reading about Hong Kong, I realized how extra cool this was. They have, now let me read the stats on this. It's kind of a dark picture, sorry about that, but it's because it was at night. The picture on the left, they have the world's longest outdoor covered escalator system.
What?
Sounds very complicated. So that picture on the left is a picture of the elevator of people coming up and there's stairs beside it. And it's the central mid-level escalator. It is 2,600 feet in length. And it's like a series of escalators.
Oh,
so it's not like one
like
2,600.
how long does it take to?
No, it does take you a long time to travel on it.
Okay.
But because the city is built into lots of hills and stuff, it does save you from having to take the stairs.
Got it.
You would walk a lot of stairs, and people do a lot of walking and public transportation, and so to avoid some of that, you can take the escalator. They have escalators everywhere though. Like you go into a mall, there's an escalator to get in the door, and they have like these tiny ones where you could barely fit one person, or you always. Like here in the States, you could have two people on an escalator side by side.
Yep.
You never do that. You always stand on one side and people like will run past you on the other side. So even if you're traveling with somebody else you know, you always stand behind each other because somebody might want to run by you.
That's very considerate of them.
Yes, but it's like
And inconsiderate of us.
escalator etiquette. So yeah, Lydia took me over here to see this and I didn't realize how important it was. I think she probably mentioned it, but I didn't realize it at the time until I looked it up a little bit more. Then the picture on the right is kind of from more of the downtown area, and that clock tower is what we're going to talk about next, kind of in the bottom part of the picture. So this clock tower is considered a Hong Kong landmark, and it's part of the city skyline. The only thing is that it's really short now in comparison to the rest of the city. But they started constructing it back in 1913, and it was the clock tower that was right beside a railroad station. The Kowloon station came up right beside it, and so they've demolished the station at this point, but the clock tower still stands there and is like it kind of points to the British occupation of Hong Kong, which it has a very British look. It doesn't look very Asian, but it's still like a revered piece of their history too. So that's a little bit about the Hong Kong skyline, and I really need to go back so I can take a lot more pictures. So Lydia better not move before I get back there. So I can see a lot more and have more adventures with her. Okay, so I have a new missionary story, but it's a short story. So all the kids at church, don't get too sad. Now you know it's not a super long story like the other ones we have, but it's still a good story.
I'll eat my snack fast.
Okay, go have your fast snack. Our story is going to be The Girl Who Sang in the Goat House. So hopefully that makes you curious. What does that mean? And we'll get to that part of it in a little bit. So first of all, I need some participation. I'm going to ask some questions, and if you did this activity today or like within the last couple days, go ahead and raise your hand. Okay, so did you brush your teeth this morning? Good. Did you tie your shoes? Did you go to school today? Now, for some kids here, they are probably almost on summer break, so they probably didn't go to school. But maybe you had like your last day of school or something like that recently. Did you see your friends when you got to school? Did you do your homework? Did you practice an instrument? Did you feed a pet? Did you play a game with your siblings? So you probably raise your hand at least to one of those things, maybe multiple of those things, and I hope you definitely raise your hand for brush your teeth. But do you know there's some kids around the world that don't even get to do any of those things that we just named off? Some kids don't get to go to school. Some kids don't have access to a toothbrush. Some kids don't have pets. They don't have other siblings to play with. There are lots of things that are different about living in different places, and that doesn't make those things wrong. It just means it's different based on where you live. Let's think about school. So kids who go to school, there are lots of different options. Maybe when you think about going to school, you think about getting on the bus, getting to a classroom with all these chairs lined up, or maybe you go to school that has like pods, like little groups of students where you work together with these other students. Or maybe you're homeschooled. Maybe you stay home and your mom teaches you. Or maybe you do your schoolwork on a computer. There's all different ways you can do school, right? But some kids around the world don't even get the opportunity to go to school. They can't go to school because the school year is like during the time when the crops come in. So they have to be working in the fields with their parents. Or maybe they have to work at their family's business and they can't take time to go to school. There are lots of different ways that kids can learn and study around the world. So maybe you learn like this kid here at a desk. Or maybe, like these kids, maybe you learn from a grandparent at home. Maybe your grandma is like your teacher. It looks like that grandma is taking time to teach those kids something. Or this girl, she's studying here. This kid, he looks like he's studying at night because he's got a little light on it, just all by himself. Or she's here in this wooden desk, just writing in a notebook. And school looks a little different for you, looks a little different for kids all around the world. And some things are also really different too, like when it's time to eat a meal. Now, when you think about eating a meal, you probably think about going to your dining room table with your family, and you get all the plates and forks and knives and plates and everything out. You eat your food there together. Now, some places around the world, the whole village gets together when it's time to eat. So all the people who live close by get together and they all eat in the same space and they eat out of the same cooking container. They don't need their spoons and forks or anything. That's just how they do it. They just eat with their hands and that's just normal for them. Now those are just different things. It doesn't make them wrong, it just makes them different. And different things are like that all around the world. So even though people live in different places and there are lots of different things, what are some things that are the same for kids around the world? So if you said something like, everybody has parents at some point. Now some kids' parents might die, but at some point they had a mom and a dad. And what about everybody needs food to survive? Everybody needs shelter. Everybody needs to know who Jesus is, right? So that they know that he died for them and that they can have a relationship with God and they can have a home forever in heaven and be part of God's family. And that's a really common thing for all kids to need to know, and all people to need to know about Jesus. So missionaries are really important people because they take the good news of Jesus to people who haven't heard it before. And sometimes missionaries do it by working a job in the area. So they'll get a job, they'll do something there, and they'll get to know people, and they'll build friendships with people, and then they'll get the opportunity to share the gospel. Sometimes we think that missionaries are like superhumans, like they just get to a new country and all of a sudden they can just do all of these things magically. But missionaries are just normal people like us. Sometimes they go places and they just work a normal job, just like everybody else, and they build friendships with people, and that's how they get to know people and figure out what the people need to know about Jesus so they can understand the good news of the Bible. So we're going to talk about a lady in our story whose name is Miss Frances, and she had a job and she got to know a girl from the country that she was serving in. And we're going to talk about a country in Africa, on the continent of Africa, and it is Nigeria. So that is where our story will take place. And Miss Frances is our missionary, and she is going to meet a girl named Wamdi. Wamdi was from the Tangle tribe in Nigeria. And Wamdi was going through a really, really hard time. And Miss Frances got to meet her and kind of help her. Maybe this story will be kind of inspiring to you to think about if you could be a missionary somewhere and be able to help somebody else hear about Jesus, maybe somebody in a tough situation too, someone who lives in a different part of the world. So this is going to be our new story about the girl who sang in the goat house.
Huh. Now I need to find out why the goat house has anything to do with anything.
Just stay tuned.
Okay, we are going to tell you about a ministry today that is happening this summer, and we're really excited about it because we get to be part of it. And so, we are going to tell you about sports event evangelism and what it is doing at the 2024 Olympics. I've told you before about this group. They assemble ministry teams for the Olympics, Summer Olympics, and for World Cup. So every 2 years they're doing something. The Olympics is the bigger event, so they have a much larger group. The one that they do for the World Cup is usually just a handful of people. And that one's harder because World Cup takes place all over a country, whereas Olympics takes place in a single city most of the time. So here is our group that is going from our church. So this will be our summer missions trip for our church. And in addition to us and our kids, we have Chaden, Joanna Taylor, and Abigail Taylor. And so those three are going to be coming with us. They also were all three on our missions trip last summer when we went to Colorado. So we're excited. This will be Chaden's first time out of the country. I think it'll be Abigail's first time out of the country.
Yep.
And Joanna will be her second time because she went to Japan last year. So I'm going to show you some pictures that I might have shown you before, but it's been a while, from when I went to the 2016 Olympics in Brazil with sports event evangelism. So this is one of about 6 or 7 teams that went out during that event to share the gospel, hand out booklets. This group here is actually mostly from one church in Canada. So it's mostly one church and then some Brazilian missionaries because every group needs someone who knows the local language.
Oh, yeah.
And so I spent my first day out with them when I did this last time. These are the booklets that we used in Brazil. This year we have booklets that they have like the flag of France on the front, and I think they might have the Eiffel Tower on the front too. But these booklets are going to be in about 10 or 11 different languages. And as you can see in this picture, there's a whole bunch of languages represented here. And so when we go out on the streets and see all the tourists, we can hold up all these different booklets in the different languages, and whatever one they recognize, we can give that to them so that they can read it in their heart language or maybe in the language that's closest to their heart language, rather than just everything being in English or everything being in French, since the Olympics are in France this year. This is a picture of one of the days we were out. This was one of the last days we were out when we were in Rio. And in front here we have a guy who is going through the gospel with the man in the front, and in the back the lady's doing it with the guy back there. And he's writing in his book, so he must have made some kind of a decision, whether that was to place his faith in Christ or assurance of salvation. But this guy here, he also, this lady was able to share the gospel with him. He had time to stand there and listen as she went through the book with him. And so that was really neat to be able to be there and to witness that. But at the end of that trip in 2016, we had shared the gospel with people from over 103 different countries, which accounts for about 50% of the countries in the world. We were able to witness to about 880 people, and 28 of those people placed their faith in Christ. And then over on the right, you can see we handed out over 100,000 booklets and then some other things that people brought along. So that is what we are going to be doing with our group this year. It'll be the end of July into early August that we'll be in France for the Olympics and handing out booklets. And also we're going to help take pictures and video and put things on social media to help tell people back home what we're doing.
Yep. So it's pretty exciting to look forward to. It's coming up really fast.
Yep. Sure is. So if you think of it and you watch this before the Olympics, we would appreciate if you would pray for us for not just health and safety, but really that God would prepare the hearts of those who we will come into contact with, and that we would have some good opportunities to share the love of Christ with them.
Yep. Make sure you come back next time to hear some more about Hong Kong, more from our story, and a different missionary around the world.
Yep. We will see you next time.
Bye.